I'm Chris Lee of Southeastern14.com, joined by Blake Lovell. Blake, we had 3 basketball games on Tuesday night in the SEC to discuss some odd stuff. Let's start with the one that I was at last night. That was Vanderbilt and Tennessee, which was a tie game until 55 seconds left when a combination of really good defense by Tennessee and a total meltdown by Vanderbilt tipped that one the Vols' way as Tennessee goes 8-0 down the stretch to get a win at Memorial Gym.
Yeah, played out as expected. I said I thought this game would be close, and it was, pretty much the entire way. And I just, for Tennessee, I don't think that they're one of those just overwhelming teams right now that's just going to go out and, just completely decimate someone. I know they did kind of that South Carolina, but I still just, when they're on the road, I think you're going to have games like that for them where I just don't know that they are that kind of team's going to go out and just completely, blow someone out on the road. And that's just kind of got the sense I've gotten from them this season. And so, yeah, I figured it would be close. It was. And, like you said, you got to give Tennessee credit, I think, for making the plays they had to make to win this game, despite, I think a fairly, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say it was a great performance by Tennessee by any means, but I just think that, they made the plays. And as you said, Vanderbilt, unfortunately, 21 turnovers and kind of when you put yourself in those positions and those kind of things happen. And I don't know, maybe it's one of those things where, hey, Vanderbilt hasn't been in a lot of those positions in recent years. And you just you never know where you're going to get in those situations. I mean, we saw it, against South Carolina a while back too. I guess that was about a week or so ago. And I just think that that's what it comes down to sometimes. Yeah, they won the game at Arkansas that was close, and they've won some other close games. But I think sometimes when you have a team like this that finds itself in those positions that, quite frankly, hasn't been in a lot of those positions in recent years, you're just going to have the way things play out kind of as they did in that one.
Yeah, I know that both teams are really good defensively. They both really get after you. Tennessee really wreaked havoc with Vanderbilt's backcourt last night, forced a lot of turnovers. There were times Vanderbilt had numbers, and then a guy jumps up and snatches a pass out of midair. But I watch these teams, Blake, and neither of them are a lot of fun to watch when they've got the ball. Scottie Pippen has just reached a point where I think he played better last year than he is this year. They don't have enough parts around him to get big buckets from somebody else when they need them. That forces him to make plays, and sometimes, when everybody knows where the ball's going, that ends up being a disaster. It has been at the end of games at times. For Tennessee, my goodness, outside of Kennedy Chandler, I don't know where they have offensive answers right now, Blake.
Tennessee's going to have to win ugly. I think that's the best way to put it. You look at their last 3 wins. They haven't scored over 68 points, but their defense has been good enough that they haven't had to score, right, more than that to win. So I think there's something to it. And really, when you look at their last, I'm pulling it up now, I just realized this, but 5 of their last 6 games, take away that game in Kentucky, they haven't hit the 70-point mark. So I just think that they're going to have to win ugly some games, and the reason is their offense is just not – they're not very consistent on offense, and I've said it all year. And, your opinion changes on that as you see them play at times, but Kennedy Chandler's still the person who's going to make them go, even if you have, Vescovi and some of these other guys stepping up around him. He's still the guy that everything is going to come down to, I think, when you kind of project where Tennessee can get to this season. It's all about him, and I think that, like you said, they're not going to win a lot of games necessarily that are just going to be, your Alabama, Auburn specials that are, 85-80, and those. Tennessee's going to have a hard time winning those kind of games because it's just not. I don't think that they are built to win those. They are built to win, 65-60 type games, 70-68. Like those are the kind of games I think that they have to play to be able to win, because I just don't think that they are a great offensive team to be able to do that. And two, I mean, this was something we talked about going into it. Tennessee's games away from home, they managed to find a way to win this one, and thank goodness they did, right? Because they just pretty much every other game they played away from home this season, outside of those ones back in early December and November against North Carolina and Colorado, they just haven't found a way to win. But they found a way to win this one, and even an ugly win you will take in the SEC.
Well, that's away from home with the bullet, because I was in that gym last night. It was half to 2/3 full, and it was more Tennessee than Vandy. Vandy's now got a fan base of about 3,000 to 4,000 of its own people that attends games, which is just, if you grew up here, it's astonishing.
Yeah, it's not the way it used to be. That's putting it lightly. So
here's a caricature of Tennessee last night in one box score line. I'm going to give this to you. This is this was kind of how it seemed at times. Zakai Ziegler, 27 minutes, 0 of 8 from the field, 0 of 3 from 3, 10 of 12 from the line, 11 points, draws 5 fouls, 2 assists, and 4 steals.
yeah, I mean, you get your points how you can get them. If you need to get them one at a time, that's better than not getting them at all, right? So, hey, if you need to score, if you can't get 2 or 3, just take them one at a time and see what you can get. But yeah, you don't see that stat line very often. Someone that goes 0 of 8 from the field and 11 as well from the free throw line. That's a very unusual statistic, but hey, they needed that to win. So yeah, it's just because look, I mean, you didn't really have Josiah Jordan James didn't play but what 4 or 5 minutes I guess in that one. And so at least you had Ziegler, you had Powell, give them a little bit of something off the bench, and they had to have it in a game like that because elsewhere they didn't get a whole lot outside of just their starting group there. So.
Well, the unsung hero for Tennessee last night, Uros Plavsic, who I don't think we've ever talked about on the podcast before. He gives him 13 points. He's 6 of 7 from the field. He probably had the biggest play of the game. Tennessee misses a shot with about a minute left. Vanderbilt, if he gets the rebound, is going the other way with a chance to go ahead. He gets an offensive putback. He's not a guy that you expect to step up for them. But when John Fulkerson got, I think, his third foul about 13 minutes into the game, he had to play more minutes, and I thought he really dialed it up for Tennessee on Tuesday evening.
Yep, got to have those guys that can play, 10 to 20 minutes a game, and he's been one of those guys that's consistently done that here over the past, month or so, I guess now. He played sparingly before that, but yeah, I mean, you've got to have those guys, especially, as we said, of a team that's, can get in foul trouble and can be a little inconsistent on the offensive end. You need some of those performances, and you get that here and come away with a win, even though, like we said, it wasn't the prettiest. But in the SEC, they don't care about style points; just have to win games, and that was a big one for Tennessee to move back to 3-3, knowing that they got some pretty big opportunities coming up here next against LSU and Florida.
Okay, speaking of strange box score lines, the Arkansas game with South Carolina played out the way we thought in a way and not the way we thought in another way. I think if you know that Arkansas is going to go 0 of 11 from three-point range, you don't think the Razorbacks win by 16, but that's exactly the way it went down.
Well, it's funny because if you would expected any team outside of Missouri, maybe in the SEC, to go 0 of 11 from the three-point line, probably Arkansas, because they've just been a bad three-point shooting team that really just has not been able to rely on that at all much this season. I think we talked about it a while back. They were having games where they were just making 3 of 20-something, and even more recently, I don't think they've hit double figures, I think, in three-pointers 3 times this year, which, I mean, that's not out of the norm completely, but still, it's just, this was not a great three-point shooting team from the start, and I think you got to expect that. But if you're going to play a team like South Carolina, you're going to have an opportunity to get the free throw line, I think, because of the physical style and the aggressiveness and all that. And Arkansas took advantage of it. I'm sure, South Carolina people would have something to say about them shooting 33 free throws, but it's the SEC. If you've watched the SEC before, there are going to be games where, 60-plus free throws are shot or somewhere in there. It's kind of what you understand at this point. Also, I mean, the rules of college basketball, we know, too, have kind of tightened up to where there are more opportunities to call fouls and such. So, yeah, this was one where Arkansas didn't get off to a great start here, but once they got rolling, they were hard to slow down. And I mean, I've said it, like, this Arkansas team is not one that's just, they can't play the way they played last year. They can't do the same types of things and be able to win that way. They have to do things a little bit different, and this team has to attack. Like, they can't just settle for outside jump shots. They're not going to win games that way. And you saw more of that here, I think, in terms of them realizing what they had to do to win and to make that comeback after being down 7 at halftime. But South Carolina, on the flip side, what do you say? I mean, we talked about before, you have no idea night in, night out what you're getting from this team. You just don't have a clue. And I don't think Frank Martin probably knows at this point. It's just probably, let's see who steps up. And in this game, you had two guys that scored in double figures, and everyone else was just kind of, they're just kind of there. Like they just didn't do a whole lot. So I think this was another very good win for Arkansas. I know it's South Carolina, but it was a very good win for Arkansas because of what we talked about before, this manageable first half of the schedule. They put themselves in an 0-3 hole. Now they've gotten back out of it very quickly to 3-3, and they've got some great chances coming up next. Texas A&M, Ole Miss, Georgia, Mississippi State at home after that, Auburn at home after that. Like they have got 4 of their next 5, or I guess it's going to be, if you count in the West Virginia game, they've got 4 of their next 6 games at home. So they put themselves in a really good position here. And I think that, as I said before, don't be surprised if even, for them being 0-3, their schedule is so manageable this first half that we could look up and they might very well be 6-3 in the SEC come, the early February.
Yeah, a thing or two on Arkansas before I circle back to Carolina, and then we'll hit on Ole Miss and Missouri. It's not the same team as it was a year ago because they don't have a Moody, they don't have a Tate on this team, I don't think, who were the guys that really made them go. But you're starting to see what you saw at times last year where you would see different guys step up on certain nights, and Jalen Williams scored 19, which I think was a career high for him last night. He's played well at times. Stanley Umude was plus 17, 12 points, 6 boards. He was kind of that do-all guy that they got, so he played well. J.D. Note's been in there for them most nights, and he was again last night. Tony's been really efficient from the field, wasn't as much last night. But you're starting to see different guys step up, which was kind of their recipe at times last year. Again, the difference is they had one big standout they don't have this year, but you're starting to see them win sort of in ways that they did last year. And number 2, I think they're 52 in the net today, Blake, which has got them back on the fringe of NCAA discussion, and probably more than the fringe. They're probably right there or getting close with another win.
The net, you know how much I love the net.
Oh, we love the net here.
I don't.
But in their defense, they're 38 in KenPom, so they're actually then if you believe KenPom is the standard, the net's underrating what they've done a little bit. But anyway,
the net's a wild piece of equipment. But yeah, I mean it's important though. NCAA tournament committee uses it, and kind of like you said, they move up to 52 now, and what range you have to be in to be in that conversation. And this is where, like we said, yes, like they can't win with J.D. Note having to score 28 points a game every night. Like it's not going to happen. They have to have everyone kind of start to contribute more, and you're seeing that here. And as we mentioned, it's once you dig yourself in that 0-3 hole, you have to avoid any more of those bad losses, or else that can counteract some of the wins like they had at LSU. So this is like to the point now where it's like, yeah, these wins against Missouri, South Carolina, if they beat Ole Miss, Georgia, maybe A&M, even the A&M game. I mean, if A&M beats Kentucky, that changes a lot. But if they don't, I still think A&M's the team that's probably not going to be right there just yet. So these are games that are sort of ones that you just can't afford to lose now if you're Arkansas, because you don't really have anything in the non-conference schedule to lean on. So I think that's where it becomes so much important when it comes to the computers and the numbers and all that. You have to win these kind of games, even if they're not really going to push you back to that point you feel like you need to be just yet, but you'll have plenty of opportunities to do that come February and March. So
Carolina just does not have an identity. I noticed Jermaine Cousinard didn't play last night. He's one of their best 2 players coming to the season. I Googled that while we were talking, so I don't know what the deal was there. I think he's been hurt. That may be something that flared up, but I didn't immediately see anything on last night. Keyshawn Bryant has just not been the Keyshawn Bryant he's been in the past. James Reese has stepped up and been a guy for them at times. He got 10 points last night. But I mean, like Chico Carter Jr. at one point at the end of the non-conference season was becoming a real factor for them. He's barely playing at times, was a non-factor last night with 3 points. Devin Carter gets 20 and doesn't look good at times. Wildens Levesque's probably been their best player this year statistically, but he played 10 minutes last night. I just look at them and I don't get any kind of sense of direction. I'm not trying to be critical of Frank Martin here. I don't know what's going on, but I just watch them, and I cannot figure out why we can't figure out who they are.
Yeah, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know what to even say about South Carolina because I'm with you. I don't even know I don't even know what opinion to give on this team. They're just one of those teams that I think is going to probably settle around the bottom four. And, you may have nights where you feel like that they are in a very good spot, but some nights they're just not going to play great. And I think you saw that last night. Like they had a great first half, but the second half is just completely different. And that's just kind of the tale of this team is you're going to have so much inconsistency that you just don't really know, what you're going to get from them on a night in, night out basis. And really, I mean, the thing is, and again, this is not a knock on Frank Martin either, but look, you have to point it out. When's the last great offensive team they've had there?
Final Four team? And I don't know if that was a great offensive team.
That's the thing. That's exactly why I asked the question. That was not a great offensive team. That was just a team that got hot at the right time and, quite frankly, used its defense to alleviate a lot of the problems with its offense. And that's kind of the theme that you've seen over the years there is this South Carolina team, pretty good defensive team. Like they are. Like they're pretty good. But it's not enough to counter their offense, which is just not good at all. And that's the issue. I mean, think about it, how different things could look right now if this is a team, though, that's been built on defense. And some years that works out really well. Some years it's not. And it just isn't working because they just don't have any sort of offensive rhythm. Like you said it best, like they don't have an offensive identity. And I don't remember the last time they had an offensive identity outside of Sandarius Thornwell just taking over games. So you can only get so far, I think, in that scenario. And again, I don't know if that's a Frank Martin issue. Is that just, talent just not being able to hit that level that you need to hit in the SEC to be a good offensive team? But that's a big issue.
South Carolina is Vanderbilt without a Scottie Pippen Jr. With the supporting cast, it's probably 5% better. Is that fair?
I mean, that's probably, around that range. And it goes back to recruiting, right? Like, when's the last time South Carolina's been they've hit
KJ
that
Lawson?
level of, I mean, I was going to say, like, it's just recruiting wise, like they just haven't. And, I don't even know how you speak to that. Like, it's just one of those things where you are we talk about it every year now. Look at the recruiting rankings in SEC basketball now. There are typically 7 or 8 teams that are in the top 25 or more. Like, there are more teams that are in there every single season now. And it's been that way for the last 4 or 5 years. So I'm not sure what you even say to that. So, yeah.
Sorry, that was A.J. Lawson, not KJ as I called him.
I thought you said AJ, so that's my
no, I said KJ, but maybe they could use KJ Lawson if he can shoot a basketball.
Maybe.
I feel like we nailed 2 of the 3 games last night, but I mean we took a big swing and missed by 4 foot at a breaking ball in the dirt. What happened in Oxford? I mean, like if you'd said to me this is going to be a 15-point game at halftime, it's going to be a 25-point margin, I said, yeah, that's what I'm thinking is going to happen. I did not in a million years expect Missouri to be the team that won. Missouri has been just brutal on the road. Ole Miss has been pretty good at home, pretty good most places, more often than not lately. Hasn't always had wins to show for it, but explain that one, Blake.
Well, I was going to say I'm gonna take us out of the equation. Who else had Missouri winning by 25 on the road in Oxford? I don't think anyone in America had that. So I told you we talked about it this morning before we recorded. I just think sometimes when you have 2 bad teams at play, you can get much more. You just get some very strange results, and I think this was the example of that, where you just have 2 teams that, quite frankly, overall just are not very good right now, and I think that's going to equal some of these games like this, where you have one where the one team just everything goes in their direction, and the other team it goes in the opposite direction, and you have kind of the way this game played out here. And again, look at all the data, look at everything going in this game. There's zero reason to believe that Missouri's. I mean, honestly, there's probably zero reason to believe Missouri's going to hit the 70-point mark, much less win a game by 25. And so, yeah. I mean, I think you just talked this up to this is just one of those games that happen, and I say this all the time with different games, but this is one of those games that happens throughout a 36-7 game season where you can't explain it. And I think this is one of those games for Ole Miss where, as we've said before, this isn't a good offensive team. We just talked about it with South Carolina. This is a team that we knew was going to be built around its defense. And, it's just when you don't have Jarkel Joyner, I know we talked about them playing, up sometimes without him, but over the long haul, that's more of an outlier, I think, than what you actually get without him. And you saw that here. One guy gets in double figures, and that's it. And they could not hit a shot from anywhere. And on the flip side, how many times this season have we seen Missouri shoot 64% from 2 and 57% from 3? And it's just statistically, it makes no sense. And I think it's just one of those games that great job by Missouri. They simply outplayed Ole Miss. But is this a sign of things to come for either team? I don't know. I think it's just one of those games. So.
Well, I guess the big thing for them is Amari Davis, who transferred from Green Bay, I think, was the Rising Freshman of the Year, scored 17 a game last year, jumps up and gets, 23 for them last night. They did have a couple of mid-major players that I think had been freshmen in their league, he being one of them, that you said, hey, this could pop and work and Missouri could jump up and be, a little better than we thought. Maybe he starts to put it together for them. Although that was kind of out of character. He'd had 7-0 the 2 games before that, 10-2 the 2 games before that. So that was out of the blue in terms of what he'd done recently, but maybe something they can build on. The other one, and we don't talk about Missouri a lot, other than when it's just been spectacularly bad, but Kobe Brown has had a really nice year for them, and on a better team would probably start to get some All-SEC mention. I don't know if that would be fair. Everybody's got to have a leading scorer, right, and a leading rebounder and all the things that he does. But Brown had another really good game for them last night, which has kind of been par for the course for him. He's really taken a big step up this year.
Yeah, not much of a surprise. I mean, going into the season, we knew he had to be the guy. He was pretty much, the person everything was going to have to run through for them to win games. And, yeah, so I think that's kind of played out as expected with him. I mean, he's had a good year. And like you said, if he's not on Missouri, he's getting a lot more recognition probably just for the type of potential and talent that he has. So, it'd be fun to kind of watch him moving forward. But, this is where, again, this is where we really figure out, okay, can Missouri build off of this, or is the upcoming schedule of at Alabama, revenge game, home against Auburn, at Iowa State, home against Florida, that's a tough 4-game stretch. So we'll see if maybe these next 4 games tell us that this is a Missouri team that's just simply getting better, or is it a team that this game is a very interesting outlier and perhaps nothing more based on just playing an Ole Miss team without its best scorer, and now you've got 4 teams that are probably all going to be in the NCAA tournament coming up next. So.
That's all I've got. Any parting thoughts on your behalf?
Nope. Should be interesting to see going into some of these, games this weekend for these teams we just talked about. Got some pretty interesting matchups, of course, Tennessee and LSU and so forth. So, yeah, Missouri and Alabama looks a lot more interesting now, I guess, based on the first time around. So, yeah, we'll talk more about those teams and obviously the others that are playing on Wednesday night as well.
Yeah, we've got previews of Wednesday's games up on the site. We were a day later than usual getting those out, was because I was almost stranded on a mountain in Gatlinburg on Monday, which pushed everything back a day. But we'll have that up at the site if we don't already, and then we'll be back tomorrow as we recap games of Wednesday night.